We are still under pressure tonight. Tonight we want to take a look at things that you guys choose. We realize that you guys have a ton of things that get packed into your daily lives. And we want to recognize that, but also recognize the fact that tonight I don't want you to feel like you have to leave and say that you need to quit things. Because that's not what we're trying to teach you tonight. That's not what we're trying to say. Because we recognize that a lot of you do some really awesome things. But what we do want to do is give you a way to look at your lives and say, how do I choose what really, really matters in my life? How do I prioritize those things? And how do I make sure those things come first? And most importantly, that I am living into those things because those things are really ultimately making me a better follower of Christ. Does that make sense? Yes. Good. All right, y'all are already more talkative than the junior high group. So we are an over-programmed generation. You guys, we talk about this all the time about how you guys are really one of the most over-programmed generations that there has been. And I know that you guys have all sorts of activities that happen. How many of you are involved with 3 or more activities throughout the week? Like all of you. And some of them are here in church, and some of them are sports, and some of them are band or theater or different things. And we know that you guys stay really, really busy. And I'm sure that your calendars get absolutely packed. And like I said earlier, tonight I don't want you to look at your calendar and start marking things off of that. But I want you to be able to look at it through the lens of why does God want me to do these things? Where is God leading me in these things? And how do I sometimes choose yes or no? Am I doing this for the right reasons? Because I think some of you could probably admit that you have jumped on board before. You have done something for the wrong reasons, even if it was a good thing. Even if it was one of the best things that you could be doing, you jumped on board and started doing it for maybe some of the wrong reasons. So I know that as I've grown older, I learned that I slowly had to start plugging stuff into my calendar, and that I am kind of at times an over-programmed person, that I have to prioritize my day, that I have to set aside different times of the day so that I make sure things happen. I forgot about that slide. Let's just move on. All right. Here is my calendar from this past week. And so if you look at this, there's some really, really important things on there, like Fart Neil's office at Monday at 1 o'clock. And then there's some not so important things, like Sunday school planning at 2 p.m. on Tuesday. That was a joke, you get it? How I made one of them really important? You guys are geniuses. But in my day, a lot of times there's so many things going on that I really need to put it on my calendar. Okay, I am blocking off 2 hours right here so that I can plan my Sunday school lesson for this weekend. And that helps me to know that I'm going to put in my headphones, I'm going to close my door, I'm not going to be disturbed, and I'm going to work these things out. But ultimately, a lot of times what will happen is someone will knock on my door, someone will come in, or something happens and I distract myself and I end up pushing those things off. And that's not all the time a bad thing, but sometimes it shuffles my priorities in the wrong ways. And so I know that you guys' life looks a little bit like that. You might not be as fancy as me and use iCal. However, you could use it. That's my short promo for iCal.
Is it an app?
What?
Is it an app? iCal?
Yeah, it's like on my Mac. Yeah, it's an app. Don't you have an iPhone?
So it's just calendar?
Yeah, it's called iCal. I'm shocked at this current moment that you don't know what this is. You and I are going to talk later, and then I'm going to get you in contact with David. Anyways, moving on. Tonight, I want to look at what I think is really kind of a cool time management story in the Bible. We're going to look at Mary and Martha. This is in Luke 10, verses 38 through 34. So hear these words from the gospel. While Jesus and his disciples were traveling, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him as a guest. She had a sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, that's Jesus, and listened to his message. By contrast, Martha was preoccupied with getting everything ready for their meal. So Martha came to him and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to prepare the table all by myself? Tell her to help me." The Lord answered, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. One thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the better part. It won't be taken away from her." So what's happening here? We have two characters, Mary and Martha. And I really think that Mary and Martha do kind of represent two different things. They represent doing and being. So Martha is running around the house. Like if you imagine your mom, when you have a party at your house, you're having guests over, or your relatives are coming in town, like that whole week I'm sure is kind of a stressful thing because your mom, your dad are running around the house and they're trying to make sure everything is ready, right? Anyone else experience this? Good. Yeah. All right. There's people in the room. Martha is running around the house trying to get everything ready. She's trying to make sure like the ranch dressing is in the right spot and there's little, like square sandwiches and all this. What?
It's really important to have it ready.
Yeah, ranch dressing is important to be in the right spot, Jake. Come on. So Martha is running around the house, making sure everything is prepared for Jesus to come over. I mean, if there's any bigger, is there really any bigger person to come and be a dinner guest at your house than Jesus? And so Martha is running around, making sure everything is ready. So she's doing all of that. Meanwhile, Jesus sits down in this chair that I have, and Mary just sits next to Jesus. And she does this cool thing. The scripture says she just listens to the message that Jesus has for her, which is like mind-blowing. And see, I think Martha does a good job of completing a to-do list. Any of y'all make a to-do list during the day? Man, that's one of the first things that I do when I sit down at my desk. I have my little notebook and I write down all the things that I want to get accomplished that day. And then throughout the day, I push them further and further down. But I write and I have these to-do lists. And I wish that I was really good at checking those all off and getting them done. But that was what Martha was. She was really good at doing her to-do list. And there was nothing wrong with her to-do list. But that is what she did first. And then Mary, what she chose to do first was she just sat down with Jesus. And it says she heard the message that Jesus had to deliver. And so she sat down and just heard this message. She heard what Jesus had to say to her, and she just sat there. Now, of course, Martha comes and is upset about this because she's left to do all the housework on her own. But Jesus tells her she has chosen what is most important at that moment. I didn't share this story with the junior hires, and I just remembered and thought about it when we were worshiping, and so I want to share it because I think it might sort of kind of apply. When I was in my first year of seminary, I was trying to think of what year it was. My first year of seminary, I remember I was going through this really rough patch. This really, I called it kind of like a dry spell in my spirituality. And I felt like I just wasn't connecting with God, and I felt really far from God. I didn't really know what to do, and so I felt ultimately like my prayer life had become the most ungenuine part of my life, which is really scary. I remember sitting in a room with a bunch of other people in seminary, and when it came time to say who'd like to close us in prayer? I remember all of us just kind of looked down at our feet, kind of like you guys do in Sunday school. And I remember thinking in my mind holy cow, we are all here to become ministers. And I kind of became I was like, whoa. Yeah, this is, but this happens. And so I started examining my prayer life, and I remember saying that I was going to do something bold, and I kind of admitted it to myself on the drive home. I had an hour drive home, and I just kind of stewed over this. And so I remember saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop praying. Because that seems to follow. Right, exactly. And back in my mind, I was like, why would you choose to do that? But I decided to stop praying because it had become so ungenuine. And so I started just saying very simple breath prayers. I would say the Jesus prayer. I'd say, Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And that would be the only prayer I would say throughout the day, if I even got to it that day. And I slowly started to rebuild my prayer life. And I remember about 3 weeks in of doing no more prayer than just this, I remembered this awesome, awesome thing that happened when I was a senior in college, a year before that. A junior in college. We had this summer retreat that happened for all of our students, and there'd be 60 or 70 students that would come, and we'd put on this big event. It was kind of a breakthrough-esque type event, but it was at our church, and so it was a much smaller scale. But I remember the last night, the speaker asked me, I went to him before, and I said, do you need anything for tonight? And he said, yeah, I just need one chair. So, that's awesome, that's easy. Okay, and so I brought him up a chair on stage, and as the night went on, he eventually asked for a couple students to come up, and one by one, he got students to come up and sit in the chair. And he asked for people to come and just lay their hand on the student and say, this is what I love about you. A lot of like the things that we do on senior nights and different things around here. And they just said what they loved about this person. And so we went through 3 or 4 kids. And I remember thinking, man, this is so awesome. This is so cool. Seeing these kids have people share about what they love about them. And then finally he and some of you may have seen this done before, finally the chair was empty and he invited the presence of Jesus to come sit in the chair. And so, I was just mind blown at this, this moment. And so he invited the presence of Jesus, and slowly, one by one, all of these kids started coming up and telling Jesus what they loved about him. All of these awesome, awesome things. And I tell that story because when my prayer life started to come back, it was because I remembered that. And so what I started to do was sit down next to an empty chair and look at Jesus in the face, in my mind, and just talk to Jesus. And hear what Jesus had to say to me. And for me, my prayer life was completely revitalized. The rest of my life was revitalized. The way I prioritized my time changed because I started my morning sitting and looking at Jesus, saying, Jesus, what is it that you have for me today? How would you have me fill my day? And a lot of times that didn't make anything in the day that I had already planned on my calendar change. But I knew that I had already had a conversation with Jesus about it. I want to encourage you to think like Mary thought. The first thing that she did when Jesus came in was, I want to sit next to this guy and just hear what he has to say. When you guys consider your lives, the things that you fill your lives with, the activities that you do, the projects that you do, the sports that you do, all of these things, there's the hobbies that you spend your time or your weekends doing. I want you to consider sitting down with Jesus, looking him in the face, and just saying, Jesus, how does this make me be who you intended me to be? That's my simple message tonight. Sit down with Jesus. Look him in the face. Say, God, can my calendar line up with your desires for me?